Hello and welcome to Prairie College's podcast. My name is Haley Kieftenbeld and I'm a fourth year student here at Prairie and a senior intern for the Outdoor Leadership Program. Just in brief, the Outdoor Leadership Program exists to cultivate kingdom leaders. And today I have the privilege of being with three kingdom leaders here, Weston, Bria, and Caden. And they just recently experienced 21 days in Death Valley, California. Pretty crazy to me. So before we jump into the logistics and you guys can share your desert experience, I would love to just hear who you are, where you're from, and why you returned to explore for a second year. Maybe we could start with Weston.
Sure. So I'm Weston. I'm 25. I'm from London, Ontario. And yeah, I originally signed up for the 2-year program just because partly the Death Valley trip, the experience of 3 weeks backpacking in the desert just sounded awesome to me. And so I knew I was in it for the 2 years for that. And I'm very thankful that I made that decision because, yeah, that trip was definitely life-changing.
Thanks, Weston. Yeah, it's a common thread that people come for 1 year and in the end they stay a bit longer, 2, 3, or 4. How about you, Bria?
So my name's Bria and I'm from Chilliwack, BC. I'm 22 and I'm actually in my 3rd year and I signed up for the 4-year program off the bat. I knew I wanted to get a bachelor's and so I actually came to Prairie seeking a different bachelor's and then changed halfway through to outdoor leadership and haven't regretted it.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Caden?
My name is Caden Draybert. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta. I'm 20 years old, and I came to Prairie right out of high school. I initially came to the Outdoor Leadership Program I was really interested in the outdoors and in that aspect of the program, and that's something I really wanted to pursue and give a try. But I ended up staying for the leadership aspect of it for 2 years, like that common theme of people staying a little bit longer. And I really saw the value of that leadership training after doing a summer of work, working construction, and just seeing how the leadership principles we learn in the outdoors can apply to any context. So that was a big factor in me deciding to come back.
Yeah, as you can see, we've all come from different places, BC, Alberta, Ontario. We have people from the States too, so quite diverse all around, but just so great that we can all come together and step into leadership and what that means to be a follower of Christ. So yeah, heading into the deep waters of Death Valley.
Or the dry land of Death Valley.
Yeah, the very dry land. That's a better correction. Thank you.
Except for snow.
Snow. And no rain though. No rain. So yeah, what is Death Valley? For our listeners, they don't even know what that means. So if you guys can just popcorn in and tell me, what is Death Valley?
Death Valley is, it's a national park in southeast California. It's the largest national park in the U.S. and it's a desert. It's recorded as having the highest temperature at least in North America, possibly the world, in history. So it can get very hot, and so it's a mountainous desert, lots of mountains, but lots of valleys as well.
Death Valley is unique because there are 3 mountain ranges in between the park and the Pacific, so that's why it's so dry. And because of how dry it is, there can be a very large difference in temperature. It can move from temperatures as low as -15, -10, and then get up to over 50 degrees in the summer. So that's what makes Death Valley pretty unique and special.
These students here, they've done a year of outdoor leadership 1, so Explore 1, and you jumped into Explore 2. And what's really amazing is it's like a combination of what you've been learning. So you guys have been learning soft skills and hard skills, conflict management, risk management, how to communicate with one another, how to make decisions. So there's all these factors that you've just been working on hard through your team. And so then there's this big event, Death Valley. So what does that look like from the first day you arrived at Frontier, back for term 3, all the way to coming back here to campus? So we just want to kind of paint an overview picture of what this experience was.
Well, I would say prior to term 3, we didn't know a whole lot about the trip, just in general. And then our first week back, we spent a week planning from like 8 to 5 every single day. There's a lot of details that you need to hash out. So the first week is mostly just dedicated to planning, understanding more of the trip, planning out route, planning out the food you're going to eat, planning out your own lessons, your own MC days.
Yeah, no, for sure. Can someone touch on MC days? What does that mean?
Yes. So our group, we had a group of 12 people that went. There was 9 students, or 2 interns, Haley being one of them, Matt being the other, and then our Frontier Lodge staff, who's like the partner with the outdoor leadership program out in Nordegg. And so your MC day is basically for each of us students. We were the one in charge of that day. So Haley and the rest of the staff kind of passed off their responsibilities of like leading where we should go when we were stopping. Just like the whole day became one of our responsibilities.
So yeah, big prep week and then head into the van. What next, Caden?
Yeah, so we had about 2 days to drive down to the park. And it was a good trip, but we were all excited to get out of the van when we got there.
Yep.
And when we arrived to Death Valley, the first step that we needed to do was drop off all of our caches. So as you go on this trip, you cannot fit all of the food and water you need for the entire trip into your backpack. So what we needed to do was go out to locations that we had found beforehand on the maps and drop off water and food so we could find them later. And just so we could have enough to be able to complete the 21 days. So we spent a couple days doing that. And when we were finished, we had finished a little bit late. So we spent one night camping at the beginning of the canyon to where we were going to start. And then the next day we actually started the actual traveling.
You saddle up with your pack. How big are these packs? What are you carrying in them?
So everybody's pack is like a 65, I think, to 75 liter capacity bag. And then, we just have to stuff it to max capacity full of clothes, food, water, any other like supplies, cooking gear, sleeping gear, literally everything you need to survive for 3 weeks or food wise, don't carry all of it, but like and the stuff that you cache, but a lot of it, whatever you need for the first section of time, which for us was 11 days until we reached that first cache where we were going to get to refill our food and get new clothes.
Yeah, we would need to resupply on water one every 3 days, and water was carried in kind of like an artificial water skin that allowed you to fit the water into your bag reasonably well.
So definitely like carrying a child or a small adult on your back in a way.
Yeah, especially Bria, who's one of the smaller people on our team, had one of the largest packs, so that was always great to see.
It covered like half my body.
Yeah.
No, it was more than half. It was almost as tall as you.
Yeah.
I could fit in my bag, basically.
Yeah, it was quite impressive.
And so to get on the packs, most of us would not be able to get our packs on ourselves. So that was one of the big things that you have to learn, is you have to know how to ask for help.
You definitely learn the meaning of teamwork, I would say, when it comes to your pack. Unless you're like Caden and Weston and they just do it like themselves.
We got help sometimes
We
too.
still got help.
Actually, yeah.
Caden could do it more than a lot of the other guys. But when his pack was like full, everybody needed help.
And even I lifted my pack by myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Day 7, it happened. So even if you're small, you can do it.
Yes.
Small and mighty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, you saddled up with your packs and you headed out. And where did your journey begin?
So we started out in Marble Canyon. Was like
Okay.
our first. If you look up Death Valley, you will find Marble Canyon. So that was like our starting location. Yeah.
What was that like? Really, you knew where you were going on your map. So just to clarify, the students only had compass and paper maps. No GPS, no nothing like that. Just the good old
No
mapping
modern
compass.
technology.
Yeah. So, what was that like going into the unknown territory?
Exciting. For me, like, yeah, I was excited to see all the different terrain, because when you're looking at a map, it tells you like where the hills are and the canyons and stuff like that, but you can't actually see what they look like. And so when you're actually walking through and you've got like 30 to 40 foot canyon walls right beside you that are just pure marble, and like it's so different than anything that you see elsewhere. And so once you get into that, it's just, you want to keep walking for the sake of, you want to see more cool things.
Yeah, no,
I would say for me, there's also like an element of like scariness or like fear, just because like I didn't know what the next 21 days held, and that's kind of daunting sometimes. And yeah, just wondering of like, oh man, like my pack's really heavy, am I gonna make it? Or even just like, yeah, like am I gonna have the perseverance for this, or how hard am I actually gonna be challenged, and will I be able to make it? Just kind of like those questions were often popping in my head, and then like I would just have to like breathe and relax and be like, hey, no, like it's gonna be good, like Jesus is with me, like, yeah.
Within the same park, the topography could look so incredibly different depending on where you were and what your perspective of it was.
Yeah. No, it's honestly quite mind-blowing what the desert holds and how much life is actually found there. Because I remember when I went the first time, I was like, okay, there's going to be sand and more sand and probably like some little hills. And no, just completely blown away by the shrubs and the bugs and the little spontaneous flowers that pop up that are just a real joy. And no, God is a wonderful creator. Bria, you kind of touched on it, some like challenges and fears you had in your mind. I would love for you guys to share, if you're comfortable, just maybe one challenge you faced personally and how you overcame it.
Going to the desert, going to the hottest place on earth, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be warm. But that was not the case. We were cold a lot more often than we were warm, just because of that range in temperature. And because you're in a national park, you can't have fires. And so that's one of the great ways to keep warm. And when we couldn't have that, and it was still winter, so there's a winter wind, and that just rips through. So we'd do our hiking, and you'd be pretty okay when you're hiking. But once you stop for dinner, to make your food, the sun's gone down, the temperature just starts dropping really quickly.
Yeah, probably the physical side of things was one of my biggest challenges. I'm 5'4", so I'm quite small compared to everyone else. And yeah, just having like a massive pack and being like, this is the most weight I've ever carried in my life. This is the most amount of days I've ever been hiking consecutively. And so I was definitely scared of it, like, am I gonna hold up? Like, am I just gonna collapse halfway through and not be able to make it? So yeah, just like fear on if I could actually like physically do it. Especially just being like a smaller female in like the outdoor world. It's like in my brain I have this picture that like it's only meant for like strong people, and I don't fit into that category. And so yeah, I guess like the way I really overcame it is just really remembering that like God had brought me there for a purpose and a reason, and I really trusted that and knew that. And so in the times that I was like doubting that I could like make it, like prayer was a huge theme of my Death Valley trip, and just praying constantly, and even about like the littlest tiniest things of like, Jesus, my feet hurt, like please give me the strength to keep going. Yeah, and so I think just like remembering my reason why, which is like another theme of Explore, is getting you to know your why, not only for being in school, but for life in general, of like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because that will give you the motivation when the times do get hard.
Yeah. So something Explore does really well is keep you extremely busy. There's very little downtime through programming, and I think it's designed that way as it ups stress and makes you look at how you perform in difficult environments. And to be honest, when we were leaving for Death Valley, I thought it was going to be a relaxing camping trip, and we just kind of hang out in the desert until until we were given our lessons. And then I was like, oh boy, this is classic Explore. fill in every spare minute of your time through the trip. So like Haley mentioned, we had a 15, a 5, and a 30-minute lesson we needed to teach, and you'd get graded on it by your instructors, and we had time to prep for them before we left. But while we were in Death Valley, it just gave an extra measure of responsibility while we were out there. So when you're dealing with the cold and just figuring out life in the desert, you needed to take an extra step into being responsible as a leader in your team with the responsibilities that you've been given, while also taking care of your own needs and making sure that you can fit that role and do it effectively. So I'd say the difficult part for me was making sure I was prepared for my leadership days and my lessons while going through life in the desert.
All very real responsibilities, and you guys probably felt the weight of that too when you had to step up and teach and facilitate the the MC day. So yeah. And what was so great about the lessons, just for our listeners, is the students are teaching the students. It's not the staff or the instructors. The students become the teacher. And what is just amazing is it's not lecture-based. It is all experiential. The students are doing problems and having them to collaborate and really wrestle with the lesson topic. And just amazing teaching that can happen there in the wilderness with not a lot of materials, but just so much knowledge of like history or L&T, backpacking, and also the heart of leadership. So really awesome job. I can still recall a couple of them, especially Josiah's, where we threw rocks like a penguin.
Yeah. Or learning about clouds when it's like dark outside and you're just running around and pretending to be clouds. Like you work with what you've got, and our whole team did amazing with getting everybody involved and having fun while still learning and making things memorable, which makes you like actually remember the lesson. It's a really neat way that Explore designs the teaching process for us to experience, as well as then know how to teach others in the future with that experiential model.
Yeah, and that's actually Explore 1 is when you go through being taught, and so you're the one being facilitated, you're receiving all of this knowledge, and then the focus of Explore 2 is now you're stepping into the role of facilitator. So you've experienced it being a student, but now you're going to transition. And so that's like how this trip also meets like the learning objectives of the second year is like we're the ones teaching. We have an MC day. We're stepping into that role more than our first year.
And just to clarify, the lessons we were teaching always was about the environment we were in or about an outdoor skill. So for example, one of the lessons I taught was a lesson on navigation. So that's what these lessons are about.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And I think I didn't mention Explore also means outdoor leadership. So Explore 1 means the first year outdoor leadership students, and Explore 2 means the second year outdoor leadership program students. Great, thank you all for sharing. The next question I have is, what was the most significant moment for you in the desert? Oh, loaded.
For me, this one, once as you tell family and other friends who weren't on the trip, they're asked what was the most memorable or the most significant. And for me, I've had this answer that I think is for sure the most significant day for me. It was our 8th day. It was one of my MC days. It was my co-MC day. So we had a solo MC day, and then we had a group or partner MC day as well. And so this one was my one with a group, and we had been walking for just over a week already. Every day traveling between 6 to over 10 kilometers. I think the day before this day we had walked 13 kilometers, which was our longest day. And so me and my MC group, we'd planned to have a rest day. And so we called it a Sabbath day. We all slept in till an extra couple hours, so not getting up at 6:30. We got up between 8 to 10 o'clock, which was amazing for everybody.
Yeah.
So it was just a great day of rest that way. Had a really slow morning, and then where we were was also just my favorite place. It was this place called the Racetrack and the Grandstand. So it's this wide open flat as flat can be expanse of just dried clay, cracked on the ground. It's 10 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide, of just this vast expanse of flat. But right smack dab in the middle, there's this just giant rock feature. It's lava rock just coming out of the ground in the middle of this. And so after lunch, we walked over to this rock feature, and we just had an extended time of solitude and just reflection on our first week of the trip so far. And yeah, it was just a beautiful day, a great time of solitude there. And then after that, I got to share my testimony with my team, which was the first time that I'd done that with my team. And yeah, it was just a very special moment for me, being able to do that in a place that I found extremely beautiful. And yeah, just the way that I felt comfortable sharing my testimony was, I think, a big moment for me.
I guess the first thing that came to my mind was journaling, but we did that every single day.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most significant thing that we did. I guess specific time frame though was probably the solo, just because it gave me a lot of time, to journal, but also just to sit with everything that I had been processing and learning, and to really just have that break to be able to sit with stuff and really sift through okay, what is God trying to say here, and what does this mean for me, and just kind of all of that. That kind of for me really came together during the solo.
Such a great time, because the solo is 48 hours alone. You're in this little dune bowl, and it's just you and your tent and your bag and no one. And I guess God. You're with God.
Yes, very much you and God for 48 hours.
How about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of steal Weston's too, piggyback off his, but I think the grandstand for me was the moment that pops out for me. Specifically when I was sitting up on top of the grandstand for our reflection time that day and just looking out into the valley and how big and vast it was. And I was thinking about the events that got me to Death Valley. And 3 years ago, I could not have imagined being 21 days in what's known commonly as the hottest place on earth. Even though it was cold. But yeah, just looking back, would have been probably the last place I thought I'd be. And just as I looked back on those events, I could clearly see how God was guiding me in my life, and how he had me where he wanted me to be, and that I was a lot happier where I was than anywhere that I could have gotten myself. So to be able to remember that and be thankful, and then consider how moving forward I'm going to just rest in that, and that God will guide you and where you need to be.
How did you encounter God in the wilderness?
a lot of people had this theme as well, but for me, I really saw God as provider, and this is a common theme for people in the desert, just because there's such a lack there. There's no food, there's no water. So in a very practical sense, you're in a place that's barren, and so you need to trust God's provision. But for me, looking at it that way, I was able to see how that is a picture, God providing through us physically as we're walking through the desert, finding water, and just providing through like the people that you're with. That's a picture of like our spiritual lives and how God provides just as well and more satisfactory in our spiritual lives.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably have to piggyback off Kaden on this one as well. The provision aspect was definitely huge. Like Death Valley, before we had come, like in kind of December and really early January, they had actually experienced a good amount of flooding, which did have some other effects on our trip, but it did mean that there was the most amount of water that like the Explore 2 trip has ever seen in Death Valley before. So like that's definitely one of those big aspects of provision from God, is we had the water that we needed, whereas the year before they were definitely struggling to find water. And like there was waterfalls flowing that are rarely flowing. And so it was just like providing that beauty and that experience for us. But the other aspect is the combination of prayer and provision. Is there was multiple very specific times I can recall is we would just send out a quick little prayer to God for something, and then it'd be answered like so clearly. Like I can think of one is we were just like walking down a canyon, and it was getting later in the day, and we were looking for somewhere to camp, and it was one of our bigger days, and we were all feeling pretty tired, and so I just sent a quick little prayer. Hey God, please give us somewhere flat and not super rocky for us to camp, and that wasn't super wet either, because we were kind of beside a spring that had been flowing a good amount. And then we turned like 2 more corners, and we had like a perfect campsite that was like, it was amazing. And it was like literally within like 5 minutes, just an answer to prayer. That was a campsite that we did get snowed on though. So, I mean, a little bit of hit and miss there, as well as like right before our solo, we were walking out to the dunes where we did our solo, and it was just super windy, like crazy wind. And we set up camp together the night before that we were going to start our solo, and it was like super windy. We all prayed to like calm the wind, and when we were going to bed, we noticed, the wind is pretty calm. Like that's awesome. Like we can sleep well before we go into our solos, figuring that it might stay windy the next couple days. But our solos, there was zero wind. Like it was perfect. It like blows my mind, the fact that there was no wind for those 2 days, but the day before was crazy wind, and even the day after our solo, it got windier again. So like just the clearest answer to prayer, so that we could really sit in our bowls and experience God's presence without the distraction of, I'm so cold and I've got stuff blowing everywhere and all these other distractions. We could really just focus on him.
Yeah. The ironic part about the snow too was that Josiah prayed for snow that night.
Yes, snow. That is why we got snow, is because yes, there was prayer for snow for some bizarre reason.
And when we say crazy wind, we mean like it took 4 to 5 people to set up a tent, whereas regularly it's like I can do it by myself sometimes. So that's how crazy it was, just to keep all the parts not blown away on the ground.
Yeah. We even had to make like a tent fortress like, in a couple meter area.
In a circle, so we could cook in the middle, so that our food would actually cook and wouldn't just get instantly cooled by the wind.
Yep.
Or covered in sand.
Or covered in sand. Yes.
That too. I guess for me, like, how God met me was, yes, provision and yes, prayer were big themes. But to add something new to the discussion is identity. Yeah, God really spoke to me about, like, who I am. And that was, like, the biggest blessing on the trip that I could have ever experienced. And, yeah, has just been super good. And even after, like, I still go back to those truths that he told me in the desert. Like, those created a really strong foundation for me. And I would keep returning to, like, what he said in the desert, even now that I'm not in the desert and I'm here back on campus living life. Yeah. But those truths are still very valid into what I'm doing. And, yeah, all point back to Christ. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for your time and for sharing. And I'm excited for the next adventures.
Lots more to come.